It's your boy Joshua Mundy coming with another episode of The Art of Scaling Up. And we're live at the Scale Up Business Conference that we do every year. And we bring entrepreneurs from all across the country to learn from some of the best experts on how to scale your business. Before I introduce my guest today, I need you to do 4 things. I need you to like, subscribe, make sure you comment, as well as hit the notification button when we drop this amazing content on YouTube. Today, I have a legend. I mean, I would say a worldwide legend. It just can't. It's just not to Nashville. It's a legend, and his name is Clint Smith. He founded a company called Emma. You probably heard about it, but we're going to talk about it today. But thank you so very much, Clint, for joining me at the Scale Up Conference.
Josh, you are far too kind.
Did I add some sauce to it?
You might have.
So I like to start with your origin story. So let's just, how did you get started in entrepreneurship? Let's just walk us to that journey.
I'll give you the quick story. Okay. I grew up in South Georgia, small town, came to Vanderbilt. That's what brought me to Nashville. Part of the appeal of Vanderbilt was Nashville and the music scene. I did some songwriting in high school, and particularly sort of on the church side of things, and ended up at the end of Vanderbilt getting a publishing deal. So out of college, I was songwriting for Charlie Pride's music publishing company for a couple years, and working on demos of songs and those sorts of things, and then got a job, sort of a day job, a temp job, just to sort of make some money and fill the other time at a healthcare company that ended up getting me knee deep into Microsoft Excel. And so that was a large part of that work was really essentially sort of mastering Excel spreadsheets and all the ways that you can sort of utilize that, which would come back to help later. Then I got another job with a software company called City Search, based out of Pasadena, West Coast. Yep. This is sort of mid-ish 90s, right? So really, really early in the software and sort of web-based technology scene, and all the interesting companies were sort of on the coast. And we just got really lucky. I got really lucky that they decided on a rollout plan that involved tier 2 markets, and Nashville was one of them. And so I got hired pretty early on, and that led to a content job, and ultimately I became editor of the site. And so that really got me into the world of online content and everything that comes with that. And then unfortunately that company didn't quite have the runway to succeed, the dot-com crash that so many companies got caught up in, including a few here in Nashville. And so at that point, we looked around and we're like, there are no other interesting companies in Nashville doing anything like what we just did. Sorry, City Search, I skipped one. City Search was fine, eventually sold to Barry Diller and became part of some other stuff. And then we were part of a startup here called smallbusiness.com. Okay. And that was the one that didn't quite sort of have time to work out. After that, a coworker of mine there approached me and said, hey, there aren't any other companies here that we want to go work for. Why don't we think about starting our own?
Wow.
And that was just it. Like, we didn't have any idea of specifically what we would do, but we knew we would want to do something rather than sort of shop our resumes around town. And so we started doing project work together. He was more of a front-end designer, website designer, and I was more of the content and I guess sort of marketing and brand guy. And we just did project after project. And about 6 months in, we came from a meeting that was supposed to be about more website work that we could do for a client, and he said, I actually think I ought to spend less on the website and more on getting the message out to people where they are.
Wow.
And we walked away thinking, well, that sort of sucks, because we were hoping to get some client business out of this. Yeah. But it actually got us thinking about the new idea of push marketing, and at that point, email was not really something that every business was really comfortable using sort of on a bigger scale, right? Obviously, individually, we were all using it by that point. This is the early 2000s. And so we started working on the idea and then sort of built it up from there.
Got you.
That was a pretty long origin story.
Yeah.
I went a little bit deep, didn't I?
You went deep.
A little bit long.
And the origin story is that you all built Emma. So tell us, what is Emma?
Yeah, sure.
And what was that journey of actually building something with some coworkers? Did you all have equal equity? How did that work when it comes to building that business?
So it was just two of us for a while. Will Weaver, a very good friend of mine. We traded a website project for free cubicles down in Grassmere Business Park for the first year. And we were doing the project work to make some money, right? Pay ourselves and keep the lights on, while we worked on the Emma concept. And we settled on the Emma name relatively early on, and really it was just the email marketing sort of words smushed together into an acronym. But we realized we chose the name because the concept became, let's sort of warm up technology and bring a more human element to it. And that was the thought, because at the time, this was early software days, right? Yeah. It was clunky, it was not user-friendly, customer service was terrible, and we thought, gosh, we can do a better job at all those things, we think. So we were working on, so the way we started was we just sort of worked on what we thought the product would look like, just flat screens. And we took it out to friends to get feedback, and we would go back and work on it and kind of go through that rotation a bunch. We were equal partners in whatever we thought the company would be. We didn't have much sort of thought beyond that. And it was the two of us for a while until we hired a part-time intern essentially to build a working MVP essentially. Yeah. I don't even know if we called him MVP spec. Right. And then that MVP, we were able to go back to some of those potential early customers / friends. Say, okay, now what do you think? And hammer on this with us and use it. And we got to a point where we had actually some paying customers on this kind of alpha version of the product. And we got far enough along where we needed to hire our first couple of people and sort of slowly built up from there.
Yeah. So let's talk about the scale strategy.
Yeah.
So you had a couple customers, and you went from a couple customers to over 50,000 organizations. What, based on what I read.
Yeah, sure.
So, what was that process of? All right, we're onboarding all these organizations. Do we need to hire more people? What is the do I need to go raise some capital? What was that process of scaling up?
Yeah, I mean, it was gradual, right? I mean, we had a handful of customers paying us to start, and those were the customers that kind of knew us, and we'd already been walking them sort of down the path to this, with them. And then we had a few more, and then we said, okay, well, let's start. We feel good enough about the product now to start marketing it just a little bit, because before then it was just a little bit of local, word of mouth. And so our first real sort of scaling effort was we took out a $400 ad in an email newsletter that went to marketers. We're like, okay, if anybody's going to get what we're doing here, with basically an email marketing and newsletter service, and Emma, that's all it was at the core. It was a way for companies to send lots of emails to a large audience, whether that's 500 people, 5,000, more, and do it in a really professional and good-looking way with tracking on the back end, and just to manage it more professionally and give their audience members the ability to opt in, opt out, sort of have some control in that, some say in that process, right? So we got some customers using it locally. They told some people, they started using it. We took this $400 ad out in a nationwide email newsletter that went out every week to marketers, and we would get people calling and emailing and saying, hey, I'd like to try this.
I'd like to try it. And
we'd get enough people signing up off of that email, to make the $400 worth it, and we would just do it again next week.
Yes.
And so it was this very sort of incremental sort of build, right? Which it tends to be. But we could start to see, okay, we're reaching a point where we do need some help. And we also knew it was so early, it was still all taking shape, and whatever job we would come up with would probably look different, 6 months later. So we posted a job called Operations Associate. We're like, it's sort of utility infielder. Yeah. We need help with a lot of stuff.
Right.
And the stuff may be different 6 months later. And we posted it, and Annie, our first hire, responded and said, I've read your website, which was actually not Emma. It was a company called Cold Fit Creative. That was how we did sort of our project work. And she read the job posting. I'm coming over this afternoon, and you're going to hire me. Like I want to be part of this.
Wow.
And we're like, wow, is this how hiring works? That's easy. Right. And she came over, and sure, she was awesome, and had just super talented and energetic and smart, and we hired her, and she stayed for 10 plus years.
Man, that's amazing. Let's talk about the exit. So, what was?
Yeah, because the stuff in the middle is really boring.
Yeah, no.
it's a lot of part's interesting, and then yada yada yada, and then
we can really dig deep in the middle, but we'll let you do that downstairs.
Sure, exactly.
So, because the middle talks about the failures, the ups and downs, the roller coasters, and all those things.
Exactly.
But it all happened. We know it happened. But you did
have there.
You did have an eventual exit.
Yes.
Now, what was the thought around exit? Was it like, I'm just tired of doing email marketing? Is it time to do something different? Or did you just get a number that you couldn't refuse?
A little bit of a lot of things. We had sat down. First of all, when we started working on the sort of deciding that we were going to be on a path toward exit, the few of us sort of on the leadership team, I guess, got together and said, okay, well, let's start to imagine what that looks like. Let's come up with a number that we think would be meaningful to everybody. Everybody at Emma had some measure of equity, and that was something that Will and I felt very strongly about right from the start. So that if and when we ever got to the point where we were selling the company, that it really would be good news for everybody in a deeper way, right? Than just, hey, congrats, we sort of got a win. So we started working on that plan at a point where I was probably about 13 years in.
Okay.
Right. So that's a long time.
Yeah.
And startup, right, with all those ups and downs. So it certainly was partly me saying, I'm imagining a time, 2-3 years out, where I probably will be ready to step out and do something else, right? It's a long time to be in one place, and it'll be good for the company too. So that was certainly part of the thinking. And personally, I was looking at our oldest son, Carter's schedule, and he was going to graduate high school in 3 years. All right, well, that could be a nice kind of finish line for me and for us as a family. And again, I also felt like it was probably time for us to not only start planning for that, but maybe to bring in some more seasoned folks to join the leadership team, and that would be good too. So it was really sort of a 2 to 3 year plan. We decided kind of that day. We all wrote a number down, and the number was kind of the same. We said, all right, well, that feels pretty good if we could ever get there.
Yeah.
And then we did raise a little bit of money. We'd never raised outside capital to that point. Back to your earlier question, we thought we would need some initial capital, which we did, and we thought it would be friends and family, and we prepared as if. And then SunTrust said, you know what, we work with Will's family. Why don't we just give you guys a line of credit and let's see how far you can get. And if you can at least get a working product with more paying customers and get a little further down the line, then you'll have more say in terms of investors and investor terms and that sort of thing. So we were able to, with the help of the bank, kind of slide past that typical early raise that most companies have to go through, and we just got to cash flow positive and stayed. And so we never felt this urgent need to raise capital.
Yeah.
It wasn't until much later we said, okay, well, if we're gonna plan for exit, we probably need to hire some people. We probably need to make sure sales are going exactly like we want them to, and invest a little bit in that. And let's go raise money with help from Nashville Capital Network. So we did that. They helped us fill out the board a little bit. We went and hired what we felt like was the most critical need of CFO to really sort of help us get the books ready and the company ready and engineering towards sort of that eventual outcome. And eventually I said, you know what, if we're going to hire somebody like that, why don't we see if we can't hire somebody who can also be my successor when the time comes?
Yeah.
Because the bet was, if we're going to sell, it'll either be to a strategic company or venture or whatever, and they'll probably fold us in with other companies. It will become a much more complicated and complex organization. The financial part of that is a huge part of it. A seasoned CFO with people skills seems like an interesting and obvious choice. And I through an interesting hiring sort of effort, which I told you super briefly. So we ended up hiring a firm to help, a search firm, because we word of mouth wasn't cutting it. We weren't finding the right person. And we engaged with the firm on like a Thursday. And that weekend, we walked down a block to our friend's house, our neighbor's house, for a cookout. And he says, oh, you guys are looking for a CFO? My wife's cousin, Welford, in D.C., is a fantastic CFO.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, awesome. And I write the name down or whatever, and we get the search firm's list of candidates back on Monday, and he's on it.
Wow.
And you're sort of like, I wish I'd had that cookout a week earlier. Yeah. We could have saved some search agency money.
Right.
But it sort of was validating that, like, the universe is telling us something. And I sure enough, I went up to D.C., and after a couple phone calls and 10 minutes in, we both knew, like, this is sort of meant to be. He was from Memphis.
Okay.
Always wanted to get back closer to home and work for what would be his 7th software company, but eventually have a chance to be CEO. So that set a lot in motion once we had Welford on board. And then we eventually had some inbound interest from a venture firm who had already invested in a couple of companies like us, had bought one, essentially one of our competitor companies, and liked the space and wanted to do more, and wanted a good leadership team and maybe a place like Nashville to serve as home base for it. So
awesome, man. Yeah. Well, listen, we're going to continue this conversation downstairs live at the Scale Up Business Conference. We're doing this all live at the Scale Up Business Conference. And my man is about to go on stage in a few minutes, and we're going to actually put the two conversations together so you can get more in-depth information about what he has up next and the things that he's doing and some of the lessons learned in his journey. Again, I need you all to like, subscribe, comment, and hit the notification button when you get notified, so you can get notified
All the
of
things.
this
Do all the
amazing
things.
content. Thank y'all so very much. Make sure y'all tune in next week. Thank you.